Well, hello there. I hope this video really turns into a conversation between you and I and whoever else watches it down in the comments section, because that, I think, is really where change can happen. Not saying it will, but got a better chance of happening if we talk about it, right? This is a topic that's been on the top of my mind, my wife's mind, for a very long time. Food companies out there act like they're doing you a favor by making an already natural product natural, not adding high fructose corn syrup in it in this case, or removing the natural sugar from something just to add fake sugar to it and then add artificial food dyes, petroleum. Which leads me to the first thing that I want to talk about and the reason why this all started with our family. When our first daughter was around, I would say 1.5, we really started to notice some different things going on with her, and we had no idea why these things were happening, right? It was a really interesting thing because it wouldn't happen all the time. And what I mean by that is sometimes she would just lose it. I mean, not like a toddler tantrum, we're used to those, just not her, you know what I mean? We started to take a deep dive into what exactly we were eating and things like that, and trying to think about maybe there's some things that she's eating that's causing these things, both at our house as well as friends' houses or at family members' houses. And we came across artificial food dyes. Now, this whole video is not going to be about artificial food dyes, but this is how our story first began. We noticed that when she would have foods with artificial food dyes, which is a petroleum-based product, not a natural product. Now, there are natural food dyes out there that don't bother her at all. Imagine that. We noticed that certain ones would have certain reactions with her, like these uncontrollable sessions of just outbursts that would last hours, if not days, depending on the food dye that was in the food that she had. So whether it was yellow or blue or red, they all seem to have different responses. So I have a question for all the food manufacturers out there. What would happen if you stopped using all the fake ingredients that is hurting us, hurting your customers that are buying it, affecting your customers in such a ways that is creating chronic illnesses, birth defects in some cases, and, which ultimately leads to death. All because you want to save a few dollars. But in the meantime, what would happen if you stopped using those things, went back to using real things, real ingredients? Would the price of those real ingredients go down because you're not using the cheap crap anymore? Probably. An interesting little tidbit that you may not know is that food manufacturers use a lot of salt, sodium in their products, not because to make it taste better, but to actually take away the flavor of the manufacturing process. All those things that they run their foods through, all that metal, yeah, that has an off-putting taste to it. So the reason cornflakes have a lot of salt in them is to get rid of that metal flavor. And now I know you're probably really familiar with high fructose corn syrup. We all certainly are. We all know it's terrible, yet food manufacturers keep using it. One of the reasons that they do is for the simple fact that it is usually 10 to 30% cheaper than regular sugar. But like I said, what would happen if they stopped using it altogether? Everyone. Pretty pie in the sky thinking, but it's possible if they truly care. Another really disheartening thing that a lot of food manufacturers do as well is they partner with health organizations. Now, when I say partner, they donate to them for the simple fact that those food manufacturers want to put that healthy logo from that health organization on their labels. And one of these cases was in 2014 when Kraft American cheese needed to get people to eat more American cheese. I love American cheese, don't get me wrong. But in order to get people to think it's healthy, they partnered with a health organization to slap their logo on it. And another thing to remember is that it's actually not all the food manufacturer's fault. I mean, don't get me wrong, it mostly is. But who buys it? That would be you and I. So, how do we change that? Well, I'm gonna go over a few of those things later on in this video, but it really starts here in the kitchen, making your own food, cooking for your family. The more you cook with real foods, whether it's organic or not, the better off you're going to be. And by voting with your dollar in the grocery store, voting by buying things like real food and not the super colorful foods that really try to attract our caveman fruit eyes, you know, that is the first area of defense. And we've been trying to get better at that in our own home by cooking, for instance, our own homemade bread, as opposed to buying some buns, which sometimes we have to do if we forget to make our own bread and we need some bread. But you try to buy some things that don't have 40 ingredients in it, like Sara Lee Artisan. There's nothing artisan about it, I can tell you that. And studies have shown that diets that really consist of a lot of processed foods are linked to diseases like heart disease, diabetes. I'm not telling you anything you don't know already, but that kind of diet is linked to some really awful stuff that makes you feel bad all the time. Crazy statistic that I had to really look up after I heard it is that 40% of American adults are obese. In fact, 2/3 of Americans are either obese or overweight. Additionally, 50% of those people have hypertension, which is usually a condition directly associated to diet. I was one of those people. Food labels have actually come a long way since I was a kid. I don't specifically remember reading food labels back then, but a lot has really changed if you look it up. Definitely tell me down in the comment section if you read the nutrition labels on every single thing you buy. Take some time to do. So can anybody tell me what natural flavors really means? It's pretty ambiguous, isn't it? Why are companies still allowed to use arbitrary terms like that? But if you read a nutrition label, you might find some really interesting things on there. For instance, I was just at a convention where the client that I was working for had these little s'more things because they were doing this little campfire giveaway. And I read the ingredients on it because I was just curious, so I picked one up. Now, other than the 6 different kinds of palm oil that were masterfully disguised on this label, was also an ingredient that stood out to me more than anything else. And that was titanium dioxide. And I'm not gonna go off on a tangent on specific ingredients, but titanium dioxide specifically is a preservative, heavy metal preservative, used to preserve color. We need a heavy metal to make a s'more that doesn't contain marshmallows to look like marshmallows. Come on, guys. One thing that I think could be an interesting solution to food labels, especially ones like that, would be to treat them the way we did cigarette companies. Now, what do I mean by that? What if food manufacturers had to start putting all the different ways that their food that they make could hurt you or kill you? Pretty interesting, wouldn't it? Let's really think about that. Like, what would happen? If they can do it to cigarettes, why can't they do it to food manufacturers? Just imagine what that would really look like as you're walking through the aisles of the grocery store and all of those labels had a bunch of different health effects, birth defects, all sorts of things on there, all plastered all over their labels. It would be a totally different grocery store, would it not? Speaking of cigarette companies, did you know that a lot of the big tobacco companies used to actually own the companies that make our food? Thankfully, they're not allowed anymore, but what they did still has a huge impact on our food today. And I'm specifically talking about marketing. Now let's talk a little bit about self-control, because we were just talking about marketing, because a lot of people are gonna say, you know, this is all on you. These are your decisions you're making. And while that's true, and while I agree with you, there are some things to consider that maybe we're not really made aware of honestly or fully because of the marketing of these companies that really stemmed back from the tobacco companies. Now, while self-control obviously plays a big role, what we're taught, the options we're given, what we're shown in the grocery store, all these things play a significant role, not just self-control. Now, even though I believe that fresh whole foods will cost a lot less in the long run, especially when you factor in the healthcare costs of an ultra-processed food diet, the profits that grocery stores make from all those, that's hot, colorful products that are strategically placed throughout, those are paid for in the grocery stores by the food manufacturers, those specific places I refer to. But those profits are really hard to ignore in the big picture of these things, not just self-control. And I don't have any problem with people making a profit. I should say that right up front. But maybe something can change in the marketing side of things, like the companies just caring about us. Now, it's not my job to tell you what to eat or how to eat or when to eat, any of those things. I'm not qualified for that kind of thing. And quite honestly, I don't want that job. but I do think it's reasonable to ask for transparency and real definitions on nutrition labels. That's a good one. Now, the next time you think that the people making and designing our food that we see in the grocery stores actually care about us just because they have a product that is healthy, take a look at the rest of the products in that company's lineup and tell me what you think. Do they really, really care if that's what they have to offer is something that is hurting us? I don't think they do. They haven't shown it yet anyways. Maybe they will. They should also care if their customers are dying. Now, I don't want to end this video on a doom and gloom kind of note because, you know, there are some things that we can do. There's some positive change happening in the world, and I really do believe that because I see it all the time. I see it in other YouTube creators. I see it in you guys when you comment about healthy foods on my videos. So, you know, I really do think that we're on the precipice of a really big change. So what can you do? Well, you can buy from your local farmers markets instead of a bloated grocery store that is charging out the wazoo. Actually support directly the farmers that are growing our food. Read the labels, make it a habit. I mean, it's not a hard habit to start and it's not a hard habit to keep. But if you read those labels, you're gonna be a lot less likely to buy something that's going to hurt yourself or your children, because if you don't know what it is, maybe set it down. Maybe you'll be more likely to buy something that has less ingredients with better ingredients in it. You could definitely cook more at home, me included. You know, when we cook at home, we have a lot more control about what we put into our foods and our dishes. And cooking at home is a great way to bond with your family, your roommates, whoever you live with. If you don't live with anybody, maybe invite somebody over. It's just a great way to get together. That's what I love about food the most, is it brings us all together, no matter who you are. Everybody's got to eat, everybody likes good food, and we can make it together. We could all advocate for change, use our voice, starting with this video. Now, I realize that it's a little self-serving by asking you to share this video or like it so that it reaches a larger audience, but whether it's this video or another video that does this, that we talk about the same stuff, share those videos, share all those things where people are talking about this subject. Contact your local representatives, your state representatives, your national representatives. Do whatever you can. Use that voice of yours here in the comments. Tag them in the comments even if you will, or tag them anywhere else, or just write them an email. Do something, use that voice. That's where it all begins, right? So another thing we could all do is grow your own garden. I mean, I realize that some people don't have the space for a garden. Maybe you don't. You could do a little small raised garden in your house or on your porch or somewhere. Grow your own food, and I'm telling you, once you start doing that, it's really hard to stop. But you could even do your own herb garden if you don't have enough room to do a big giant garden like ours. So I really hope that this video resonates with you, this topic resonates with you, because it's more important now than ever, especially in the United States, because it seems like a lot of countries in Europe and elsewhere seem to already have a lot of this under control. They don't let food companies rule the people's lives. So, like I said in the beginning of this video, I'd love for this to be an open conversation where we talk about these things together down in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to know what you think, the things you're doing in your own house as well as your community to make change happen for yourselves and for your family. But as always, I appreciate you. I'll see you on the next one. Maybe I'll be making this papas duquesas for you. Take it easy.